2 Years Before the Mast by Richard Henry Dana. The book is read by Bernard Mays. The original preface. I am unwilling to present this narrative to the public without a few words in explanation of my reasons for publishing it. Since Mr. Cooper's Pilot and Red Rover, there have been so many stories of sea life written that I should really think it unjustifiable in me to add one to the number without being able to give reasons in some measure warranting me in so doing. With the single exception, as I'm quite confident, of Mr. Ames's entertaining but hasty and desultory work called Mariner's Sketches, all the books professing to give life at sea have been written by persons who've gained their experience as naval officers or passengers, and of these there are very few which are intended to be taken as narratives of fact. Now, in the first place, the whole course of life and daily duties, the discipline, habits, and customs of a man of war, are very different from those of the merchant service. And in the next place, however entertaining and well-written these books may be, and however accurately they may give sea life as it appears to the authors, it must still be plain to everyone that a naval officer who goes to sea as a gentleman with his gloves on, as the phrase is, and who associates only with his fellow officers and hardly speaks to a sailor except through a boatswain's mate, must take a very different view of the whole matter from that which would be taken by a common sailor. Besides the interest which every one must feel in exhibitions of life in those forms in which he himself has never experienced it, there has been of late years a great deal of attention directed toward common seamen, and a strong sympathy awakened in their behalf. Yet I believe that, with the single exception which I've mentioned, there hasn't been a book written professing to give their life and experiences by one who has been of them, and who can show what their life really is. A voice from the forecastle has hardly yet been heard. In the following pages I design to give an account and authentic narrative of a little more than 2 years spent as a common sailor before the mast in the American merchant service. It's written out from a journal which I kept at the time, and from notes which I made of most of the events as they happened, and in it I've adhered closely to fact in every particular, and endeavoured to give each thing its true character. In so doing, I've been obliged occasionally to use strong and coarse expressions, and in some instances to give scenes which may be painful to nice feelings. But I've very carefully avoided doing so whenever I've not felt them essential to giving the true character of a scene. My design is, and it's this which has induced me to publish the book, to present the life of a common sailor at sea as it really is, the light and the dark together. There may be in some parts a good deal that is unintelligible to the general reader, but I've found from my own experience and from what I've heard from others that plain matters of fact in relation to customs and habits of life new to us, and descriptions of life under new aspects, act upon the inexperienced through the imagination, so that we're hardly aware of our want of technical knowledge. Thousands read the escape of the American frigate through the British Channel in The Pilot, and the chase and wreck of the British trader in the Red Rover, and follow the minute nautical manoeuvres with breathless interest, who do not know the name of a rope in the ship, and perhaps with none the less admiration and enthusiasm for their want of acquaintance with the professional detail. These reasons, and the advice of a few friends, have led me to give this narrative to the press. If it shall interest the general reader, and call more attention to the welfare of seamen, or give any information as to their real condition, which may serve to raise them in the rank of beings, and to promote in any measure their religious and moral improvement, and diminish the hardships of their daily life, the end of its publication will be answered. Boston, July 1840. Chapter 1. Introduction. The 14th of August was the day fixed upon for the sailing of the brig Pilgrim on her voyage from Boston round Cape Horn to the western coast of North America. As she was to get under way early in the afternoon, I made my appearance on board at 12 o'clock in full sea rig, with my chest containing an outfit for a 2 or 3 years' voyage, which I had undertaken from a determination to cure, if possible, by an entire change of life and by a long absence from books, with plenty of hard work, plain food, and open air, a weakness of the eyes, which had obliged me to give up my studies, and which no medical aid seemed likely to remedy. The change from a tight frock coat, silk cap, and kid gloves of an undergraduate at Harvard to the loose duck trousers, checked shirt, and tarpaulin hat of a sailor, though somewhat of a transformation, was soon made, and I supposed that I should pass very well for a jack-tar. But it's impossible to deceive the practised eye in these matters, and while I thought myself to be looking as salt as Neptune himself, I was, no doubt, known for a landsman by every one on board as soon as I hove in sight. A sailor has a peculiar cut to his clothes, and a way of wearing them which a green hand can never get. The trousers tight round the hips, and thence hanging long and loose round the feet, a superabundance of checked shirt, a low-crowned, well-varnished black hat, worn on the back of the head with half a fathom of black ribbon hanging over the left eye, and a slip tie to the black silk neckerchief, with sundry other minutiae, are signs the want of which betrays the beginner at once. Besides the points in my dress which were out of the way, doubtless my complexion and hands were quite enough to distinguish me from the regular salt, who with a sunburnt cheek, wide step, and rolling gait swings his bronzed and toughened hands athwart ships, half opened, as though just ready to grasp a rope. With all my imperfections on my head, I joined the crew, and we hauled out into the stream and came to anchor for the night. The next day we were employed in preparation for sea, reeving studding sail gear, crossing royal yards, putting on chafing gear, and taking on board our powder. On the following night I stood my first watch. I remained awake nearly all the first part of the night from fear that I might not hear when I was called, and when I went on deck, so great were my ideas of the importance of my trust that I walked regularly fore and aft the whole length of the vessel, looking out over the bows and taffrail at each turn, and wasn't a little surprised at the coolness of the old seaman whom I called to take my place, in stowing himself snugly away under the long-boat for a nap. That was a sufficient lookout, he thought, for a fine night at anchor in a safe harbour. The next morning was Saturday, and a breeze having sprung up from the southward, we took a pilot on board, hove up our anchor, and began beating down the bay. I took leave of those of my friends who came to see me off, and had barely opportunity for a last look at the city and well-known objects, as no time is allowed on board ship for sentiment. As we drew down into the lower harbour, we found the wind ahead in the bay, and were obliged to come to anchor in the roads. We remained there through the day and a part of the night. My watch began at 11 o'clock at night, and I received orders to call the captain if the wind came out from the westward. About midnight the wind became fair, and having summoned the captain, I was ordered to call all hands. How I accomplished this I don't know, but I'm quite sure that I didn't give the true